Teachers have read it. What is the worst thing you've seen a parent do to their child that either made you want to, or did make you, call Child Protective Services? Story 1. I've written about this before, so I'm just going to copy and paste my answer because I am not in the right mindset today to actually relive it through words. About 5 years ago in my 10th grade English class, one of the best students I've ever had the honor of teaching came to class horribly beaten up. He was over an hour early and just slowly walked to his seat and sat there quietly. I sat next to him begging him to tell me what happened. He did, but I wish he hadn't. His dad found out that my student was gay, and he decided that no son of his would be or could be gay. So he decided to beat the gayness out of him. He beat him to a pulp. 2 black eyes, a broken nose, broken ribs, and numerous cuts and bruises. When he was done beating him, he ripped my student's clothes off and put a meat cleaver on the table and made him watch gay porn naked in order to make sure he wouldn't get a hard-on. He told him if he got hard, he would chop his peen off. I didn't let him finish. I didn't want to know what else he had endured. I called the cops and an ambulance was sent for my student. They found the dad at work. He was an elementary school teacher, teaching his class like it was just another normal Monday. It took everything I had to keep from going there and running that motherfricker over with my car. Thankfully, his mom wasn't as controlled as I was. She tried ripping her husband's head off at the police station. It took literally 4 cops to get her off of him. She's about 5'2", 90, 100 pounds. He's around 6'2", 250 pounds. And she fricked him up. And after she walked out of the station, she went home and burned every single one of his things in the fireplace. Glad to say my student made a full recovery. He, along with his mom and siblings, spent all the holidays with us. A mom protecting her child is a really scary thing, lol. How did someone that terrible become a school teacher though? What? Story 2. I will lead because I'm not a teacher. However, I have had to report to CPS. A sweet 14-year-old joined a server I'm in on Discord. I also happen to be a moderator, and immediately we couldn't help but find her to be a refreshing change in company. She's passionate about animals, bright, basically teaching herself as her mom is doing her best but still struggling, and she's at home. But the more we talked about her mom, the more alarmed our mod team got. She was jaundiced, losing weight no matter what she ate, had constant stomach pain, and despite all those alarming symptoms, her mom refused to take her to a GP. Her mother would scream at her if she asked for help with school things. She was severely stunted in education and was regularly told she was useless and couldn't do anything. The last straw was when she finally admitted there was physical abuse as we suspected, including a chair being thrown at her head. Despite most of us being under 25 and struggling ourselves, we refused to leave a kid unsupervised in that position. After a long, serious conversation about what the symptoms in her health could mean, the escalation in physical abuse, and the obvious assistance her mom needed, I got the necessary information to the CPS report and filed it immediately. In 2 days, the agents arrived, assessed the situation, and were able to get some sense into the mother. The 14-year-old is now getting help with school, going to a specialist children's hospital, and the mom is working to get her own issues under control with aid while CPS makes sure everything is going right. Sometimes the solution isn't remove the kid, sometimes it's assist the parent. Abuse is always abuse, but it isn't always intentional. When it isn't intentional, it often alarms the parent to realize what they've done. As a child from that situation, with loving but also abusive parents who didn't know better, I have been determined to help others in that situation. What an absolutely amazing group of heroes. Story 3. I don't know if this counts, but I called CPS for my sisters and I. My sisters and I were regularly beaten up for failing any tests. We were sitting at a desk, and when we didn't answer a question right, we were punched, hair pulled, face slammed into the desk, and pinched. Our parents beat us up really often and sometimes for no reason. Once I was sweeping when she told me to. I was scared because she was going one by one to each of my sisters to beat them, and I heard the screaming get closer. I got frantic and stopped because the beating was inevitable. She just started kicking when she pushed me to the floor. The breaking point was when she tried to drown my sister in the bathtub. I told my counselor, who wrote down the report completely. I desperately asked to go into foster care. Months later, about 6-7 months, a woman came to talk to me. They told me to go to the front, and the receptionist whispered, "Your caseworker is in the room to the right." CPS interviewed me, and my face was in shock. She apologized for taking so long and said we go to those who can't speak for themselves first. She then made me one home visit. My sisters were too scared to say anything, and I told her, please don't give up. They're too scared to say anything because my parents are listening in the other room. She nodded and left. Again, months later, I came home from a friend's, and my mom said CPS gave her an entire copy of the report I gave to them. I've never seen her more angry. I thought she was bluffing and said, no, I didn't. Then she said the date, time, and what I said in the report. I told my counselor, and she said, well, I called CPS and they said they didn't do that. So, yeah. The abuse just went on. To this day, my stomach curdles at the thought of why and how CPS could just do nothing. Just one home visit and gone. Just one home visit? After a report like that, that's insane. Story 4. Substitute here. I had to call CPS when a middle schooler broke down when I told him I was sending him to the assistant principal's office for making inappropriate comments to classmates. He begged me not to because he couldn't get in trouble with dad again. I asked why because my spidey senses went off, and he showed me the bruises and blood on his thigh and told me they went higher. In a case CPS was already involved in, I had an 8th grader with frequent pants wetting incidents, which is a massive red flag for sexual abuse. I had a 7-year-old confess suicidal thoughts to me. I still think about him and hope he got help. He cried and thanked me when I told him I had feelings like that at his age too. I had a 5-year-old wrap me up in a bear hug and begged me to adopt him so he could have a mommy who loved him. He'd known me for 2 hours, and I told him I liked his drawing. Last week was my last week of teaching. I will miss the kids terribly, but not the mental burden of so many babies going through heck in a system that is set up to fail most of them from the start. Story 5. Did my first CPS report on a student this year. She was a very emotional child, and I noticed something was up immediately when she started acting out in class. She opened up to me at recess one day, saying that her parents fight all the time. They scream and yell and hit each other, and it makes her sad. She said that one night dad was about to hit mom and she didn't want him to, so she got in the way to stop him, and he ended up hitting her in the mouth instead. What's crazy is that her story were so similar to what I went through as a kid. My parents would always have these ugly fights where they would scream and throw things at each other, and my mom would end up physically attacking my dad. Among other things like pull a knife out in front of us and threaten suicide. It's crazy to look back and think that if I would have confided in my teacher or counselor about all that, they would have reported my parents to CPS. I never thought about that till my student confided in me about her own family issues. Story 6. I was the one who discovered the abuse. I had a student who was strangely very violent, irritable, and loud. He was very difficult, and the other kids were afraid of him because he was a bully and would beat them up. One day, I moved to take him to timeout after an incident like this occurred again. It was a daily thing. Well, as soon as I stood up and started walking to him, suddenly he threw his arms up in that cross position. If you've ever been hit as a kid, you know the pose. I was obviously confused and worried. I sat him down and asked him what he was talking about. He just started bawling, screaming, "Mommy, don't hit me, please don't hurt me," over and over. I lifted up his sleeve and there were bruises all over his arm. Technically, I'm still a student teacher only, so I wasn't allowed in the room during investigation. I did hear from a colleague that he was in fact removed from the home and the mother had been beating him. I hope that kid is doing better and isn't a bully any longer, now knowing what a loving family is like. It seems like most kids who are bullies are only bullies due to issues at home. Story 7. Here's a case where CPS was called for a ridiculous reason. A friend of ours was having trouble with her 13-year-old daughter. She threw a hissy fit about what clothes she was going to wear to school from her full closet and missed the school bus. As punishment, the mom told her she wasn't going to drive her, she'd have to walk. Because the girl was 10 minutes tardy, she got called into the principal's office and went through the whole story. It turns out the family lives just over 1 mile from the school, and that it was just below 40 degrees that day. Bingo! This violates some district policy against children walking to school in a cold environment. CPS gets called and the mom gets a home visit. What a crock of crud. Story 8. Not as serious as other stories, but my aunt works with a lot of immigrant children, usually grade 1 to 3, and she said she had noticed a student being very tired every day and not doing any homework. So the next time she met with the parents, she asked them if he was getting enough sleep or what he does at home. The parents tell my aunt that they make him help in the kitchen of the restaurant every evening after school, and they usually get home at around 1 a.m. My aunt was very angry and tried explaining that he can't be working at such a young age and until so late because he had schoolwork to do and it was affecting his grades. Aunt also reported it to the principal, but I have no idea if it got to the point of calling CPS about it. Story 9. Not a teacher, but had CPS called on my ex-husband and me. I'd shown his daughters a bunch of Weird Al videos over the weekend, and there's a line in Headline News, parody of by Crash Test Dummies, that talks about Lorena Bobbitt. Once there was a guy who made his wife so mad one night that she cut off his wiener. I didn't think it was connected at all. It wasn't acted out for God's sake. So the oldest, 5, goes to school and tells her teacher her dad showed her a movie where a guy's wiener got cut off. It was fine, but I swear I never imagined Weird Al being the cause of a CPS visit. I'm sorry, but that's freaking hilarious. I love the stupid stuff kids say like that. Story 10. Not me, but my mom. This kid was acting up at school, mostly kindergarten stuff, and when his parents found out, they would lock him in a closet and literally slide trays of food under a slot in the door. It was like the kid was in prison. You might think, whoa, severe timeout. But this kid missed school for 3 days because he was in the closet. It gets worse. He told his teachers why he was gone. So they called DCFS to handle the situation. The parents find out and buy a tarantula. You know where this is going. They let the tarantula bite the kid and send him off to school with a big butt spider bite on his hand. I saw him a couple weeks later and the nurse had wrapped it in gauze because of how bad it had gotten. Why a tarantula bite? How did DCFS not take the child away after the closet story? Story 12. I'm friends with some teachers. One family literally lived in a cave. They did periodic welfare checks. But the kids were fed, cleaned, and clothed well enough, and they were sheltered, so that was that as I understand. The parents have never been found to be on drugs or anything. They were just so poor that they lived in a freaking cave. This is in rural Appalachia in the US. Even my husband, who does home health, always has at least one patient with dirt floors and half caved in roofs. Story 13. Father was a teacher. A teacher in the school had two boys, both in high school. She had some mental issues and had to take a few weeks off. The older child came in smelling horrible a few days in a row, and a teacher pulled him aside and asked if everything was alright. He said, and I kid you not, "Mom hasn't been around to give me a bath." Like it wasn't a big deal at all. Kid is 16 and his mother gives him a bath like you would a 3-year-old. When they brought his brother, 15, in to talk to him about his home life, he confirmed this. Not 4 hours later, CPS entered the home and removed them. Teacher is still employed. Story 14. By law, if a teacher thinks they need to call CPS, they call CPS. Every time anything happens, they are supposed to make that call. It's part of being what's called a mandatory reporter, a person in direct childcare who has an immediate responsibility for the child. And you can call too. Impartial information from the community helps cases move forward towards a good solution, and it's always anonymous. Toll-free even. Save the number for your state in your phone, it might save a kid's life. Story 15. Not a teacher, but I was playing with some kids one time, and one of them fell down because of the roots around this giant tree. She started crying immediately, but not because of the injury, but because her white shoes got scuffed. Her little brother hugged her really tight and kept saying he tried to find a way to hide them when they got home, so that Mom didn't see them. The girl said she was going to get beaten up again. Told my mom. Mom called the police, never saw the kids again. Really hope those kids are alright. Your mom is an angel though. Story 16. A couple years back, I was running a preschool classroom in a low-income area. Had a kid who would constantly come in visibly dirty. Usually always had a dirty diaper. Was almost 5. So we had a theory that she never really got a bath or changed her or anything. Changed her up before sending her home one day and had my assistant draw a star on her diaper. Sure enough, go to change her when she arrives the next morning and there's a star on her diaper. She had been in the same soaked diaper for nearly 18 hours. Ugh. Story 17. I work in student support in a high school. We frequently put in child protection reports. The worst one was a 14-year-old girl living with her babysitter, mentally ill mom, and violent dad. Dad and mom gets high on meth. Dad beats mom. Dad sexually assaults girl. Dad gets the girl pregnant and punches her in the stomach until the baby dies. Oh my god. Girl denies anything is happening at home because she thinks if she's removed, she can't protect her baby sister anymore. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe for more videos to come or else this spider will be in your bed tonight.